You see, God has a plan for each and every one of us. And God's plan is a plan of miracles, a plan of breakthroughs. It's a plan of joy and fulfillment. Plan of success. This whole thing is simple. If we just follow his rules, follow his commandments, worship him, obey him, everything's going to be all right. But the evil one is trying to destroy God's plan for us. He puts roadblocks in our path, puts stumbling blocks and temptations, trials in our path. That evil one sends those false prophets and false teachings to take us off track, to destroy our worship of God, and to destroy God's plan for us. My text today is 2 Peter 2:1. 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 1 through 3, actually. If you have your Bibles, please join me. If you don't, please stand for the reading of the word. But there were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that bought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction. Then he said, and many shall follow their pernicious ways, by reason of whom the way of truth shall be evil spoken of. And through covetousness shall they, with feigned words, false words, pretty words, make merchandise of you, whose judgment now of a long time lingereth not. Judgment is not lingering. Judgment's gone. Amen. And their damnation slumbereth not. Their damnation is here with them and with their false teachings. Thank you. Please be seated. Now that is a powerful warning. Still valid today, 2,000 years old, still valid this morning. Let's take a look at some of the false teachings that surround us and take us off track. Some of the false prophets' work that the evil one sends to sow chaos in our lives. One such false teaching is anti-God. That's right. Anti-God. All these people they're smooth and quiet, and they're very successful. They are among us. They're the ones who had God thrown out of schools, so that now little children can't pray in public school. They're the same ones who threw God out of public meetings. So today, when there's a public meeting, they're not supposed to pray. And those anti-God evil people are the same ones who made a lot of folks stop displaying their nativity scenes at Christmas. You know those scenes of baby Jesus in the manger? They used to be in the public squares, the courthouse squares of most of our cities, no longer, because of the anti-God people. They evicted baby Jesus and the manger too. They even had a football coach fired. True story. He used to walk after the football game, 50-yard line, kneel down and pray. They had him fired. The courts reinstated him. That's how successful the anti-God people have been. They and their ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, lawyers, changed 2 250 years of Christian American habits, of the way that we have worshiped our God. And Christians just stood by, let them do all of their evil works. 75 years ago, mischievous little boys in schools knew that God was watching and God would punish bad behavior. I know, because I was one of those mischievous little boys. Today, mischievous little schoolboys do bad stuff in schools because teachers don't whip, and those boys are not taught that God is watching and that God will punish bad behavior. Let's explore a few of the other major false teachings that the evil one is pushing upon us. Probably the biggest one, the greatest one. Greatest false teaching is that drugs can make you happy. I'm talking about illegal drugs, the ones that you buy on the streets from the pusher man. That pusher man is the false prophet, selling a false dream that is really a nightmare. People buy illegal drugs looking for joy, looking for fulfillment. People take illegal drugs to get out of the pain and the drudgery of life, trying to get to a higher place. People who buy those and use those illegal drugs very often become addicts, and their lives become broken. And let's look at the impact of those drugs on American life. Fentanyl is one of the top killers of Americans. Hundreds of thousands of people are in jail and prison because of illegal drugs. Tens of thousands of babies have been born with serious problems, physical problems, neurological problems, because their mothers used illegal drugs while pregnant. Those babies are called crack babies. And they are a serious problem. We're struggling to figure out how to treat them and how to bring them into society, make them successful. Those are just a few of the problems brought to us by the false teaching of illegal drugs. Another one of those false teachings is alcohol. Just like with drugs, the idea of alcohol is sold to us very often as something that's going to bring joy and fulfillment to our lives. But all too often, alcohol destroys lives and destroys families. All too often, heavy drinking leads to heavy fighting, particularly between men and women. And it's not just booze getting men all hopped up and angry. I had a client, little tiny lady, took her booze glass, broke it on the wall, and used it to cut her husband. Beware the false teaching that you can find joy and peace in an alcohol bottle. Because at the bottom of that whiskey bottle is often just another broken relationship and a broken life. There are a whole lot of other false tricks, false illusions, false promises, false dreams from these false teachings that Peter was talking about 2,000 years ago by these false prophets. There are many, many more, like money. Some false prophets have people chasing after dollars like dollars are the key to the gates of heaven. Money is not the key to the gates of heaven. There's a song in 1963, the OJs sang it. They sang about money. Let me tell you what they said. For the love of money, people will steal from their mothers. For the love of money, people will rob their own brother. For the love of money, people will lie, rob, they will cheat. For the love of money, they don't care who they hurt or beat. For the love of money, a woman will sell her precious body. Money can drive some people out of their minds. I'm talking about money. I'm talking about another false teaching that the evil one sends to trap us, to snare us, to take us off track, to destroy God's plan for us. The OJs said it very well. Money cannot solve your problems. Money cannot bring you happiness, but Jesus Christ can solve your problems. Jesus Christ can bring you happiness. Now, there's some strange false teachings out there. Down in my neck of the woods, there's one called voodoo. Voodoo is almost a religion to some people. The false prophets of voodoo tell people that they can heal the sick, bring you money, make somebody fall in love with you, get you well. When you talk about false teachings and false prophets, the voodoo priests and voodoo priestesses are among the best charlatans on earth. Now, all of these false teachings have brought tears, misery, horror to so many people who make the wrong choice. They simply choose the false teaching instead of God's truth. Now, before I leave this list of tricks, this litany of false teachings, there's one more great big one: sex. Kings have lost their kingdoms. Men have lost their lives. Women have lost their families over the false teaching that sex brings joy and fulfillment to life. From the beginning of time to this very moment, to right now, the false prophets have peddled that false teaching that sex is the answer. Remember Eve and that fruit in the Garden of Eden? The serpent convinced Eve to bite that fruit. And then he got out of the way because he knew what would happen next. And this is what happened. This is Eve. Adam. Come here, Adam. I took a bite, Adam. Yes, I know that's the fruit he said not to mess with. But Adam, I took a bite and it tastes so good and it made me feel good and made me smart, Adam. Now, Adam, come on. Take a little bite.
That's all right, man.
Old Adam fell for the trick of sex. Adam fell for the okie-doke of sex. And men and women ever since have been stuck with the false teaching of sex. You see, God created sex for two reasons. First, to bring a man and a woman in a holy union closer to each other. And the second reason was so that a man and a woman in a holy union can have children, can go forth and multiply, as he told us. Now, let's go back to the word. Remember what Peter said 2,000 years ago. Peter said that there would be false teachers among us. And those false teachers would bring in damnable heresies. And then he said that many would follow their pernicious ways. I looked it up in the dictionary. Pernicious means having a harmful effect, especially in a gradual or subtle or sneaky way. Then the word goes on to talk about the consequences of following these false teachings. So, 2 Peter 2:4, he talks about the angels who sinned. And he says, God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell. The consequences is what we're talking about of following the false teachings. Then he went on in the 5th verse to talk about the flood, where God spared Noah, but he did not spare the world. He wiped the world clean of ungodly people, bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly. When you live an ungodly life, Peter's saying, God will impose some consequences on you. If you follow the tricks, it's going to cost you something. In 2 Peter 2:6, he talked about Sodom and Gomorrah. Turned those 2 cities into ashes. 2 cities, bam, into ashes. Making them an example unto those that after should live ungodly. Consequences. Peter reminds us that our master is not playing some little game. He will wipe out your society. He will send you to hell for following false teachings and their pernicious ways over God's way. Okay, now let's look at where we are this morning. We have received and reviewed Peter's 2,000-year-old warning about those false teachings and false teachers. Then we reviewed just a few examples of the many false teachings that the evil one sends to trick us, trap us. And we reviewed the costs, the consequences of the damnation that comes upon us when we let ourselves be tricked and trapped into following some of those false teachings. This is it. He gave us the word. This is the teaching that he wants us to follow. All of this other stuff. And yeah, we looked at some examples with just a few, because the evil one sends hundreds and thousands to trap us, to destroy God's plan for us. Today it's like each of us is walking through a jungle surrounded by dangerous animals and poisonous plants. Now just think about it. If you were in the darkest jungle of Brazil, the very first thing that you would do is find a guide. You would do everything you could to find somebody to lead you through that jungle. You would seek out a guide to get you through that dangerous jungle filled with traps and snares, challenges. Well, I have bad news and good news. The bad news is that you are in a dangerous jungle. Today, when you set foot out that door, you are surrounded by false teachings and false prophets. But the good news, actually the great news, is that I have a guide for you. I have a guide who can get you through. He can get you through the traps and snares. He can get you through the false prophets. I have a guide who can help you make it through. That guide is Jesus Christ. So, when the putrid purveyors of anti-God filth invade our neighborhoods and our communities, drive them out with the word of the Lord. He will get you through. If the scourge of drugs comes to your doorstep, protect yourself, surround yourself, bathe yourself in the word of Jesus Christ. He will get you through. If the temptations and snares of alcohol come to your doorstep, just call on our Lord Jesus Christ. Follow his light, follow his path. You can make it with Jesus. If the love of money takes over your judgment, takes over your family, takes over your household, let Jesus be your guide. Jesus will guide you home. My brothers and sisters, just as Peter said, the world is filled with false teachers and false teachings. The evil one operates a dangerous jungle filled with traps. But Jesus Christ can guide you through. He can guide you through the evil one's dangerous jungle. Jesus can guide you through the traps of the false teachings and the traps of the false teachers. In the midst of all evil, in the midst of every storm, Jesus Christ can step out and say, peace, be still. Jesus will get you through the storm.